They thought it was impossible. A piece of alien technology so advanced it had taken their empire centuries to perfect. Hidden away, locked down, shielded from prying eyes. They believed no human could even begin to understand it. But then, we touched it. The hum of foreign machinery filled the chamber as human hands pulled it apart piece by piece. No manuals, no guides, just instinct, grit, and the stubborn refusal to fail. Where alien scientists saw complexity, we saw patterns. Where others hesitated, we improvised. And in hours, what took them generations was reborn. Faster, stronger, different. The galaxy thought they had kept their secrets safe. Instead, they had handed us the key to the stars. So now the question is this. If humanity can rebuild in days what empires guarded for centuries, what else will we do once the stars are ours? The workshop smelled of burnt circuits and metal dust. Nothing glorious, nothing alien, just human persistence wrapped in grease and sweat. Elias Kane was not a soldier, nor a leader. He was an engineer, one of 1,000 scattered across the outer colonies where humanity clawed for survival among the stars. His mornings were always the same. Patching reactor leaks on old freighters, coaxing another year out of machines long past their design life, making broken things run again. And yet, he loved it. There was something almost sacred in watching dead metal breathe once more under his hands. Humanity didn't have the luxury of waste. They couldn't afford to wait centuries for knowledge to trickle down from the galaxy's great empires. Out here, survival was measured in improvisation and stubbornness. Most nights, Elias fell asleep staring through the viewport at distant starlight, wondering if humans would ever be more than scavengers of scraps left behind by greater powers. That answer came one morning when a sealed container was offloaded at the outpost under armed guard. It wasn't supposed to be there. No one explained. But the rumors spread fast. Alien warp technology, stolen or hidden, smuggled to human hands for reasons no one dared to say aloud. The galaxy didn't want humanity to touch it. The mere whisper of warp drive was enough to summon sanctions, fleets, and war. Entire species had been crushed for less. Elias should have walked away. He knew the risks. But when his hand brushed against the cold surface of that container, he felt a spark of something he hadn't known in years. Hope. Because if the rumors were true, if humanity could do the impossible, the stars would no longer belong to empires. They would belong to us. And somewhere, watching from the shadows, alien eyes narrowed in suspicion. They had hidden their greatest secret from humanity, certain it would remain sealed. What they had not accounted for was the one thing no empire could predict, a human unwilling to let go of a challenge. The container should have stayed sealed. Every warning sign screamed to leave it untouched. Alien glyphs pulsing faintly on the surface, resonance fields that made scanners fail, an energy signature far beyond anything humanity had ever recorded. But Elias Kane had never been one to walk away from a puzzle. The hangar lights dimmed as the crate split open with a hiss, revealing something that seemed less a machine and more a living thing of metal. Its surface rippled faintly, reacting to touch. Engineers and soldiers gathered in silence, eyes wide, breaths caught. "Warp technology," one of the officers whispered. The words felt heavier than gravity itself. The official directive was simple. Catalog. Do not tamper. Humanity wasn't ready. If the galactic powers even suspected that the outpost had possession of such a relic, fleets would descend and burn everything to ash. But Elias ignored the orders. He always had. He stripped off his gloves, running calloused hands across the alien latticework, tracing seams invisible to others. It wasn't arrogance, just the quiet certainty that machines, no matter how advanced, always followed patterns. His tools were crude by comparison. Human wrenches, cutters, scanners that couldn't even interpret the alien alloys properly. Still, he worked. Hours passed, and sweat soaked through his clothes as he dismantled panels with patience bordering on madness. By the second day, he had half a dozen others working beside him. Mechanics, coders, even a pilot who swore he had no business being there but couldn't look away. Each of them leaned in, eyes sharp, drawn by something more than curiosity. The Empire had believed humans would see only mystery. What they had not counted on was obsession, because humans didn't need to understand everything to take it apart. And so, piece by piece, the warp drive's secrets were exposed under their hands. Alien eyes. They were not alone. Orbiting far above, cloaked ships watched in silence. Alien envoys, sworn to secrecy, observed the impossible unfold. Their mission had been simple: prove humanity's unworthiness. By placing a fragment of warp tech in human hands, the Empire expected failure, confusion, surrender. Instead, they saw speed, improvisation, collaboration without hesitation. They should not grasp this, one envoy muttered, voice trembling through their calm. This technology took us centuries to stabilize. They don't even possess the theory. Yet they dismantle it, another whispered, blindly, like children taking apart toys. And yet, silence hung heavy as the observers realized what they were witnessing. Humanity wasn't decoding the tech through equations or inherited knowledge. They were doing it by feel, by instinct, by that raw, relentless human refusal to let barriers stand. And worse, each failure only fueled them further. Days blurred into nights. The outpost hummed with a tension that couldn't be spoken aloud. The Galactic Council would not stay blind forever. Rumors already spread across trade routes, whispers that humans had touched the forbidden. One morning, a distress signal was intercepted. Alien fleets were mobilizing, not yet toward the outpost, but near enough to raise alarms. Time was running short. The military commander stormed into the hangar, barking orders to shut down the project. But when he saw what Elias and his ragtag crew had achieved, the words caught in his throat. The drive was half-assembled on the floor, humming faintly with stolen energy. They hadn't just disassembled it, they were rebuilding it from scratch, learning as they went, cutting corners the original designers never dared to risk. "This is insanity," the commander hissed. "You'll bring the galaxy down on us." Elias wiped sweat from his brow, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Then let them come, because when they arrive, we'll be ready to meet them on equal ground." The breakthrough came not from precision, but from failure. A calibration error should have fried the entire project, yet somehow the human system stabilized itself. A subroutine was rewritten by a coder who admitted he had no idea what the symbols meant, only that it felt right. Where the Empire had layered complexity upon complexity, humans cut paths through the mess, simplifying, reordering, refusing to be trapped by reverence for tradition. By the end of the week, the warp core pulsed with a steady rhythm, alive, responsive, and improved. Elias ran his hand over the humming surface, eyes hollow from exhaustion but burning with triumph. They built it to last. We built it to move. The test was madness. The commander begged them to stop, reminding everyone what failure meant. But by then, the crew was beyond hesitation. They hauled the reconstructed drive into a shuttle barely rated for atmospheric flight, bolted the machine into place, and sealed the hatch. The hangar floor was silent as Elias climbed aboard. "If this works," he said, "we'll never beg at the Empire's table again." Engines roared. The shuttle lifted, trembling, fighting the strain. The alien observers in orbit leaned forward in disbelief. Then, light. A ripple in space itself. The shuttle vanished. For a heartbeat, silence. And then the stars split open as the craft reappeared, warping back into real space with a scream of energy. The shuttle tumbled, scorched but alive. The humans erupted into cheers. The aliens into fear. The Empire's fleets came sooner than expected. A blockade formed at the edge of the system, warships blotting out starlight. The human outpost prepared for annihilation. They had no fleet, no weapons that could match galactic firepower. All they had was one fragile warp core, barely tested, still unstable. Elias stood in the hangar, staring at the stars, knowing what had to be done. "We don't need a fleet," he whispered. "We just need to show them we're not afraid." The plan was reckless. A single shuttle, equipped with the rebuilt drive, would punch through the blockade and prove to the galaxy that humanity had already crossed the line. As the ship powered up, alien voices echoed across comms, trembling with disbelief. They weren't supposed to reach this point. They weren't meant to understand. They've already surpassed us. The shuttle ignited. Light spilled across the hangar. Humans held their breath. Above, alien fleets shifted into attack formations, preparing to erase the threat before it could spread. But as the engines screamed and space itself began to bend, one truth had already taken root in the minds of every witness. The empires had hidden warp technology for centuries, and humanity had rebuilt it in days. What then would stop them from mastering everything else the galaxy kept hidden? The blockade hung over the outpost like a blade, thousands of alien warships arranged in perfect formation. Their weapons charged, a storm of annihilation waiting to fall. Against them, one human shuttle. Fragile, unarmed, outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Elias Kane strapped himself into the pilot's chair, his crew around him trembling but unbroken. The warp drive thrummed beneath the floor, unstable, imperfect, yet alive. It was more than a machine now. It was proof. Outside, alien voices filled the comms, cold, certain. "Human vessel, power down immediately. Surrender the device, and your colony may be spared." Elias grinned despite the fear clawing at his chest. His reply was steady, defiant. "We don't surrender. Not now, not ever." The shuttle roared out of the hangar, streaking toward the blockade. Weapons locked instantly, bolts of plasma lashing across the void. Shields buckled, alarms screamed, but Elias held steady. "Hold together," he muttered, as if speaking to the ship itself. "Just a little longer." The warp core pulsed erratically, threatening to tear itself apart. They hadn't tested a jump this close to hostile fire, hadn't tested whether the drive could endure the strain. But hesitation was death, and Elias refused to give the galaxy the satisfaction of watching humanity kneel. "Engage!" he barked. The stars stretched. The shuttle tore forward, through the first line of ships, ripping open space itself. Alien officers reeled as their sensors tracked the impossible. "They're not evading. They're outpacing us." "How? Their system isn't stable enough to—" But it didn't matter. Humans weren't supposed to reach this point, and yet here they were, flying through walls of fire, turning the Empire's blockade into a mockery. The alien flagship moved to intercept, a vessel the size of a city. Its guns alone could vaporize continents. The shuttle's alarms blared red across the console. The warp core's oscillations spiked, minutes, maybe seconds before catastrophic failure. The crew's eyes turned to Elias. If he pushed forward, the drive could explode, tearing them apart. If he pulled back, the Empire would descend on Earth and every colony, crushing them before the truth could spread. It was no choice at all. Elias steadied his breath, hands flying across the controls. They think we copied their toy. Let's show them what we built. He rerouted power, bypassed safety systems, and forced the drive into overburn. The shuttle screamed, metal groaning, every seam threatening to rip apart. And then, light. A detonation of speed so raw it shredded enemy targeting systems, left cruisers firing at shadows. The human ship carved through the blockade like a phantom, untouchable. For a heartbeat, silence fell across the battlefield. The Empire expected flight, retreat, desperation. Instead, the shuttle turned back. The alien commanders froze in disbelief as Elias angled straight toward the flagship, every sane calculation screaming suicide. But humans had never played by alien rules. "Target their warp core," Elias growled. "But we don't have weapons. We don't need them." The shuttle's rebuilt drive pulsed one final time, overloading, folding space in a way no empire had ever dared. The distortion slammed into the flagship, tearing through its shielding, unraveling its power grid like threads cut loose. The Colossus shuddered, lights flickered, entire decks went dark. The most powerful ship in the Empire, a weapon of centuries, fell silent before the eyes of its fleet. And all it took was one human shuttle. On the comms, a stunned alien voice whispered, "They didn't just rebuild it, they made it better." The fleet faltered, commanders shouting in panic, trying to regroup, but the damage was already done. The illusion of supremacy shattered. Humanity had faced the greatest weapon of the Empire, and broken it with stolen scraps and impossible defiance. Inside the shuttle, Elias sagged against his chair, every muscle trembling, vision blurred. He knew the drive was finished, the shuttle burning out from the inside. But he also knew this. The message had already been sent. Every observer, every spy, every ship across the blockade had witnessed the truth. Humanity was no longer a scavenger of scraps. They were innovators, challengers, equals. The shuttle drifted, its systems failing. Alarms wailed. The core sputtered out, its last pulse fading. Elias closed his eyes, a faint smile breaking across his weary face. "They'll remember this," he whispered, "even if we don't make it back." Above him, the Empire's fleet loomed uncertain, caught between vengeance and fear. For the first time in centuries, they hesitated, because if one fragile human shuttle could cripple their flagship, what would happen when an entire species built fleets of their own? The battlefield fell silent. The alien flagship, once the symbol of galactic dominance, drifted crippled and powerless. The rest of the Empire's fleet hovered in uneasy formation, their weapons still armed, but their certainty shattered. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy had witnessed the unthinkable. A species with no place in their hierarchies, no seat in their councils, no legacy in their stars, had taken their most guarded secret and turned it against them. The message spread faster than any fleet could chase it. Traitors, spies, and hidden transmitters carried the story to the farthest corners of space. Humans had touched warp. Humans had bent it. Humans had improved it. And nothing, no decree, no blockade, no threat, could erase what the galaxy had seen. At the battered human outpost, the surviving crew gathered in the hangar, staring at the empty space where the shuttle should have returned. The air smelled of burnt metal and ozone, heavy with the ache of sacrifice. They did not know if Elias Kane still lived, but they knew what he had given them. An engineer with grease-stained hands, not a soldier, not a statesman, had carried humanity into the stars. He had shown that greatness didn't come from titles or empires. It came from the relentless refusal to yield. One of the younger mechanics whispered, voice breaking, "He proved we belong here." And in that silence, every weary face found strength again. On alien worlds, the news was met with disbelief, then with fear. Politicians argued in panic, debating sanctions, containment, annihilation before humanity spread too far. But the cracks had already formed. Some species looked at humanity not with terror, but with hope. For if a world as young, as fragile, as unprepared as Earth could rise to defy the oldest empire, perhaps the galaxy itself could change. Perhaps power did not have to belong to those who hoarded secrets, but to those who dared to break them open. Across star systems, whispers began. The humans rebuilt it faster than we ever did. Back on Earth, word reached the colonies in fragments, stories half believed, half myth. But to those who heard, it didn't matter whether every detail was true. What mattered was the symbol. Humanity had faced the impossible and walked away with fire in its hands. And suddenly, every mechanic in every rusted hangar, every scientist with nothing but broken tools, every pilot staring at the night sky, felt something ignite inside them. If Elias Kane could pull apart the galaxy's greatest secret with nothing but stubbornness and faith, what else could humans achieve together? The Empire had hidden warp tech for centuries, fearing what lesser species might do with it. They believed humanity would falter, fail, and surrender to the complexity. But humanity's greatest strength was never perfection. It was never elegance. It was never even knowledge. It was the refusal to stop trying, to fall, to fail, to burn, and still rise again, until the impossible bent in their hands. And now, that truth had been written across the stars in fire and defiance. In the weeks that followed, the Empire pulled its fleets back, not out of mercy, but out of caution. They had seen too much. They knew too well that if they struck now, they would not end humanity. They would ignite something worse, a war they could not control. So for the first time in centuries, the galaxy hesitated. And in that hesitation, humanity found space to breathe, to build, to dream. Warp drives appeared in secret labs, in hangars across colonies, whispered about in hushed tones. Humanity was no longer crawling between the stars. They were preparing to leap. Generations from now, scholars would argue when the galactic balance shifted. Some would point to battles, treaties, or revolutions. But those who remembered would say it began here, in a rusted hangar on a forgotten outpost, where a single human engineer refused to walk away from a challenge. Because courage is contagious, ingenuity spreads like wildfire. And once lit, humanity could never again be contained. The stars, once locked away by ancient hands, now lay open before us. The empires had hidden their secrets. We had torn them apart, rebuilt them, and made them our own. And as humanity gazed upward, weary but unbroken, one truth echoed through every heart, every ship, every colony. The stars no longer belong to them. They belong to us.